Well, hello, Quest. Good to see you. Here we are in June and headed for July, which is going to be fun. It's starting to heat up out there, but I wanted to just do our video this week for our newsletter. I wanted to relate a little bit to just kind of where we're at in our culture. And we talk a lot about it, but I think we talk a lot about it because things are so unique in our culture. Things have been tumultuous, maybe more than we're used to. Obviously, now that the pandemic seems to be past, but it still has impact, doesn't it? It's still real. It still has kind of stirred up things. It had an influence on every one of us, and we still relate to it. But there are other things going on in our culture. We call it, or we wonder about this, it's a German word called Zeitgeist. It means the spirit of our age. What it kind of defines the culture at a certain time or period of time, a certain season of a culture. And the zeitgeist of our day, to me, seems as if it's a lot of chaos, a lot of anarchy. And anarchy is about how do you tear things down, but not necessarily have a lot to replace it with. And so it's kind of anarchical, if you will. And so that's what we live with. It seems to be so much conflict. Even on the radio, I hear people, commentators, talk about that our country is so profoundly divided. And I don't know if it's divided right down the middle, 50-50, but it seems as if that's close. Some of the elections come down to 51-49, right? And it's so divisive that it's discouraging, I think. And we talk about there being kind of the radical right and the radical left, however you want to define those, left and right. And that they seem to have taken over. And I think there's a lot of feeling of wanting people to come back to a moderate middle, even if you're moderate one side or moderate the other side. Wanting to come back to a moderate place where there can be some agreement, some negotiation, some compromise. Which I also think that people in the middle are a little afraid to stand up and ask the extremes to kind of step down and allow the people in the middle. But I also think that there are a lot of issues in the middle that are becoming more clarified that make it impossible or very, very difficult for the moderate left and the moderate right to find negotiation, to find compromise. And so that division kind of stays out there. And it seems to me that people who are believers, Christians, the church, have several different options. One is to slide over and kind of buy into the culture, whether it be the left or the right, to buy into the culture, kind of jump on that bandwagon, and feel very kind of reasonable to do that. But we buy into the culture. Another option, I think, for Christians is to simply become hyperly religious, kind of reject thinking about what's going on in the culture, become so hyperly religious that they seem out of touch with what's going on. And it could almost seem kind of almost self-righteous in doing that because they can say, well, I'm just not going to worry about all that stuff. I'm just going to focus on my kind of religiousness. They don't say it exactly that way, but I think that's what kind of ends up happening. I think there's a third option that believers are tempted to choose. It's kind of the spirit of our age too, is just to be angry. I think people get angry. One is because they're disappointed in seeing what's going on in the culture, and they're just angry about it. So they feel like saying, hey, people stop. And to get angry. And I think people get angry because sometimes they know that something really crazy is happening out there, but they don't know exactly what it is or how to define it or how to relate to it. And so it seems those are the three options. Either buy into the culture, get hyperly religious, or to just get angry. I've been reading a book recently on the book of Revelation. And I think the author made a really good point that as things get darker, and we can tend to get very negative and kind of strike out against that, if you will, But at the same time, because God is faithful and God is real, and he is working out his plan in life in a more unique way than you and I could probably ever really understand. But he is working out his plan. And so as things get darker, the light becomes more distinctive. And that there is hope because God actually has not lost control. And he is unfolding this thing. And we can trust him for it. And we can buy into what he's doing. And we may not understand exactly what he's doing at every moment, but that we can trust him for that. I was reminded this week in a study of the guys are doing out of the book of Romans, that there's a passage in Romans 12 that I think really relates to this. I'd like to just read it, comment briefly, and then encourage us to kind of buy in to what the Apostle Paul is saying to the believers in Rome who are facing many of the same issues. A lot of pushback, persecution, confusion, but the church is growing in Rome. And so he writes this to them in verse 9 of chapter 12. He says, "Let love be genuine. Let it be real. Let it be the real thing. Let's love. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with a brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in our zeal. Be fervent in spirit and serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope." There's an optimism about that. To rejoice in the hope that God is in charge, that God is unfolding things, and that he is absolutely sovereign and providential in my life, and it's in a very personal, caring way, and in your life. And so he says, rejoice in hope, be optimistic because of who God is. So, rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. So to be patient in the tribulation, in the difficulties, and to be constant, moment by moment, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, to pray. And to keep ourselves humbled before the Lord and knowing that we can trust him. And he goes on to say, contribute to the needs of the saints. It's our responsibility to meet the needs of one another. And not only that, it says, and seek to show hospitality. And this word hospitality is always used as a generosity and a kindness towards not just insiders, but outsiders. To the whole world, to our neighbors, to the non-believing world. Let's be very hospitable, kind, generous, connecting. And so we live in a culture that seems to be kind of at odds, angry, upset, chaotic, anarchy. In the midst of that, rather than buying into the culture, abandoning the gospel, or to get hyperly religious, doesn't really give any hope, or to just get angry, I think we begin to say that there is a hope because God is real, and he is working in our midst, and that he has called us to have love be genuine, and that we would really sacrifice for one another, both inside the church, inside the body of Christ, and to our neighbors. I think if the church will do that, in this day and age, we will remain relevant, not only helpful and relevant to the culture, we will be helpful and relevant to what God is doing. It's one of our core values, is to be relevant. But it's not just to the culture, it's to God himself. So I'm excited about this. I'm enthused and I'm motivated. And I hope we as a church can be equally so. All right? All right. Love you guys. Be well. Look forward to seeing you soon.